Good afternoon, Hopkinton, and welcome to the Hopkinton Hangout Hour. We're very glad that you can join us on this Monday, January the 11th. This episode, we're going to be talking with Bob Dubinsky, who has a really interesting job and who has been, in my opinion, making a difference in people's lives. So we're going to talk all about that. Bob, thank you so much for being on our show again.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks for having us. Thanks for the kind words. I'm not sure I'm deserving of those, but thanks very much.
Well, tell you what, we'll see. We'll see by the end of the show once we get through.
All right, sounds good.
Let's do a real quick recap before we get to the project that you're currently on. What do you do for work?
So I'm with a company called Corporate Communications. We're an event and trade show management company. We service events and trade shows all over the United States, but real specifically in the Boston area and in New England. We're affiliated with local 25 Teamsters that have jurisdictions to set up, dismantle, manage freight at all the convention centers in Massachusetts.
Okay, great. And how long have you been doing that?
So I started Corporate Communications in 1985. So I guess that brings us to almost 35 years. Yeah.
Okay, great. Can I just ask you a question? What drove you to get into this line of business?
It was primarily through an internship that I had from the University of Cincinnati. Was scheduled to actually go down to Disney World and help design the Epcot Center. And that job fell through. I received a degree in industrial design. And that took me to an internship with a trade show manufacturer in Cincinnati. From that, I moved to Boston, worked for Digital Equipment for a little while, managing their events, and then started this company, as I said, 35 years ago.
So Digital had their own in-house events management?
Yes, and that was large in part up until Tom Peters, I think it was, wrote this book, Thriving on Chaos, which encouraged a lot of companies just to go ahead and concentrate on their core business and outsource the rest of trade shows, maybe human relations, investments. So not to have everything in-house, but take it out-house and just use it whenever you needed to. And that's what kind of gave me the incentive to start this company foresaw this trend in the industry, which has been pretty successful.
That's cool. Now, I'm not going to put you on the spot with a question that I don't like to ask people, which is, what's like your favorite event that you ever set up? Because you know what? That's just a lot. So what I'm going to ask you instead, Bob, is Can you tell me a little bit about something that was memorable to you that you did as part of your work? Well,
I guess the memorable part of our business is every event is different.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not the same in and day out. I know one of the focuses of this presentation or this conversation is the recent COVID-19 epidemic or pandemic, and then the installing of the temporary hospitals. So I would say that the event that we were involved with in Boston presently is the most memorable.
Okay. All right. So actually, that was a natural segue. Very nice job there. Let's transition into talking to. I know you're not where you were the first time. So
Correct.
Let's just do a really quick recap at how you got tapped to be involved in the first, I believe you called it an activation, in the first activation that you were involved with.
Certainly. So it was it was early April. And we received a call from Local 25, the business agent, mentioned that we might be receiving a request to help install or activate, as you just said, 1,000 beds at the Boston Convention Center, and that we should be on the lookout for such requests. And sure enough, that happened about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. And at 11 o'clock, we were contacted by Suffolk Construction, and we were asked to go ahead and put together a proposal to provide labor for the installation. That afternoon at 4:30, we arrived at the Boston Convention Center with a handful of men. There's probably about 12 of us. And we started to lay out the floors And at the height of that activation, there was probably over 100 Teamsters that installed the rooms, assembled the hospital beds, and up and running probably within a 3-week period of time, working 24 hours a day. So that was quite intense, especially surrounding the fact that we really didn't know what this virus is all about. We didn't know how contagious it was.
Yeah.
We didn't know the long-term, the short-term impact. Unlike a lot of other sites in the country, that Boston Hope Project, as it was called, serviced over 700 different patients, whether they were folks seeking shelter or they were folks that needed the medical care that the temporary hospital provided them.
So I was not unaware of that. So you installed 1,000 beds and 700 of them were needed?
Well, there were 500 beds that were in hall, what we refer to as Hall C, which accommodated the folks that needed shelter. So the mayor and the governor did a good job of taking the folks that didn't have a permanent place and providing a quarantine for them. So they offered them a 2-week stay, if you will, with breakfast, lunch, and dinner in a pretty comfortable place. And then the other 500 beds were actually utilized by the city for the overflow from the hospitals.
I see.
So they serviced, not at any one time did they have 700 heads and beds, but over the period of probably the end of April through June, I believe they deactivated in the middle of June. They had serviced over 750 people.
Okay. I think back then, things were looking pretty hopeful. Things were looking like we had bent the curve and things were going to be getting better, and they were getting better. They were.
The governor had announced one Monday that we were going to receive our last on Friday, allow a 2-week deactivation period. And then basically what we did through the month of June was mothball both the B and C halls at the convention center.
Okay. And then going back, August happened, and I remember there was a lot of consternation over what was going to happen when schools went back into session, and were they going to be super spreader events, and was it going to be a real nightmare? Which to this point, so far, everything has looked pretty good for that. However, we then came into the holiday season, and things started to fall apart around the holiday season.
They started. Jim, you're absolutely right. They started to escalate. So we deactivated in June, and then actually the month of August, we removed all the materials from both halls because things, to your point, things started to look pretty good. So, all right, we didn't need this temporary hospital ready to be activated. We took all the materials out. We've been storing those materials in case we needed another activation for the months of remainder of August, September, October, November, December, and we are still holding those materials in the unlikely anticipation that they're going to be needed again.
Oh, so now that's interesting. So all the materials that you had, you still have in storage for that location should they need it?
Yes, and just for edification, we're storing 250 of those 1,000 units. So 250 rooms, 250 beds, 250 lockers, and a lot of the other accoutrements that the nurses' stations need.
What about the walls and all the duct work and stuff like that? Do you save that?
We have that. We have the walls for 250 units and a lot of the air exchangers and about a 12 to 14,000 square foot warehouse space that's really ready to be activated. Hopefully not.
Okay. So you've done another activation, right? But not there?
So, yes. So about probably beginning of November, mid-November, we received a call from a different contractor to reactivate the DCU center in Worcester on a little different scope and a little different nature. Not a hard wall system, not a real full intensive care hospital unit, but there was over 150 partitions and beds put in place in anticipation of kind of the spike that Jim, you outlined that we had during Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So that activated before the end of the year. It activated itself with 100 units with 50 kind of on call. And then over the past, right before the holiday, they activated the entire center of 150 units. And it was reported on some newscasts that it was almost to capacity, which I don't think means 150 people were in there, but I think 150 of those heads and beds were being in and then out.
I see. Now,
cycle through.
Is this when you were in Boston, you were really on site for a lot? Well, weren't you on site while during it was activated and keeping things going?
That's correct. That's correct. So after the 24-hour shifts, we went down to one 12-hour shift, and we helped manage the movement of the freight, the medicines coming in, any of the additional equipment, some assemblies of furniture that was additionally needed. And we did that with a small 12-hour crew all the way through June. And then we brought a larger crew in to take everything out within a matter of weeks.
Okay. And what's the relationship with the DCU? Do you have any, are you involved with that now, or did you just set it up and get them running?
Correct. So we set it up. We worked with a company in Long Island. Great guy, Steve Griffiths, helped put together the large treatment center in Long Island, working with one of their contractors. So that was a 2 or 3 day. The walls weren't as elaborate as the walls that we put in Boston. They were primarily pipe and drape, like you see behind yourself there.
Yep.
But
are you giving all my secrets away, Bob?
I am. In fact, if you need any new drape, just let us know.
Thank you.
So we activated that. It wasn't a continued activation because the DCU, they have their own staff to go ahead and help manage the not only the DCU Convention Center, but of course the ice rink, the arena.
Right. Now, is Worcester the only location that you have recently set up? So
a couple weeks later, we received a call from the same contractor, and it's kind of, and this is probably one of the exciting parts of our business, is everything happens relatively quickly. So I made a couple notes here that it was actually on 12/10, right before Christmas.
Okay.
The contractor received word and a purchase order to activate. We provided crew on the 12th to accept his materials. So you have to imagine Steve had to put these materials together relatively quickly. We worked on the 13th, the 14th, the 15th, and turned our portion of the building, our portion of the construction, over to the hospital. So that involved some of the pipe and drape, some ramps for the bathrooms and the showers that needed to be installed and put together.
I see. Okay. How long did that one take to turn around?
So I may have misspoke for a second. So Worcester was a couple, 2-3 days, and then that same contractor called back and said, we have another installation at the Songus Arena in Lowell.
Mm-hmm.
That was 100 units.
Okay.
And that was about the same time frame.
Okay.
It was a quick 2-3 day turnaround. And in speaking to one of the hospital directors there, unlike the first activation at the BCEC, where they thought this hospital was going to be truly an ICU unit, the thought now, I think, in Worcester and in Lowell, and speaking to some folks, is primarily people that do their convalescence. In other words, their last 3 or 4 days of treatment. They can't go home yet, but don't really need the services of an intensive care unit. So they're able to go to these temporary facilities, which then allows a lot of these hospitals their bread and butter, which is the elective surgeries.
Yeah.
So they're able to keep part of their hospital open.
Right.
Excuse me.
You know, when I hear you describe what you're doing with the pipe and drape stuff and building these temporary things, all I can think of is the TV show MASH, and how, they're working environments kind of like that.
Right. Well, it's a little bit more refined than that, because they're indoor facilities. But I think the exciting part is that you have a whole bunch of individuals that you've never met before. And that certainly was the case with Steve. He and I had never worked together.
Mm-hmm.
In 2-3 days. The same with the Jim Grossman from Suffolk. You meet 2-3 days. Well, in Jim's case, I talked to him in the morning at 11 o'clock, and then we met each other at 4:30. And you form this, I would say, friendship or this working relationship, this bond to kind of get the job done.
Yeah.
And you go about your day in a kind of a happy manner for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll talk about that in a minute because I think that's really interesting. One question I wanted to get to was you mentioned a couple of times that you received a call and you put out an RFP or, you put stuff together. Who are you talking with? Are you talking with a company or a government entity?
So in the case of Boston, Lowell, and Worcester, they would send an RFP out, not necessarily to us, and then we would become a subcontractor. So once the subcontractor receives the contract, they need to hire a whole bunch of people for tents and towels and the construction of what we do. And then we respond to them to perform the work.
Okay. So to get back to what you were just saying, how you kind of form a bond working in that, I think that you said that very, casually and very quickly. And I think, in my opinion, that is a very profound statement because as we all know, there is a large amount of discord currently in our world. And, over the course of this country, when the chips are down, when, problems are happening and people are suffering, Americans are there and they show up and they help out. And I think that this is a case of something like that. I mean, back in the days, when they didn't know what was going to happen. They put the call out and you and your company were there putting materials in place to help take care of people. And really, when it comes down to it, what else is more important? Right?
Right. And I think it's you're meeting people for the first time, Jim. And you hit the nail on the head. It's for a good and great cause. And because of the uncertainty, there was an extra skip in the step of these the actual workers. Many of them haven't worked for a long period of time because our industry has been depressed since the beginning of March. We haven't had a trade show, and it's going to go on a year probably, and even longer. But when you have a cause that you're helping people, which is different from a regular trade show, which is a commercial exercise, you take a little bit more care. You're probably a lot more tolerant, and you just want to get the job done as quick as you can to help people.
Right. And I just think it's worth noting that this state is doing, in my opinion, a wonderful job by making sure these resources are in place, up and running. And I hope that 100% of them are never needed. We listen to California. They're running out of oxygen. They're running out of space. Hospitals, my nephew works in a hospital where they're putting patients in the gift shop because they just don't have any space. And after everything has been said and done, after all of people getting tired, getting cooped up, wanting to get back to a little bit of a regular life, wanting to enjoy their holidays, and and the surges and the spikes that we're seeing, it's like we're doing for resources. From what I see, in fact, you're the person to ask about that. How do you see the resources in Massachusetts to face this challenge?
Well, I think you indicated, I think, where it starts. It starts with Charlie Baker. Charlie Baker has put certain restrictions and regulations, and he watches the data. He doesn't watch the politics to put things in place to keep our state safe. Marty Walsh, just named labor secretary.
I know.
That's for a reason. A reason. He is a respected individual, and he runs a nice ship. And it was his affiliates, Local 25, which were a big help in Boston. They were a big help in Worcester. They're a big help in Lowell. And we'll be back in Worcester in April, hopefully, to take all the materials out. And back in Lowell, the same thing. So yeah, I think there's a lot to be proud of. I think there's a lot to unite. I think there's a lot united here in Massachusetts, and I think there's a lot of uniting we can do across the country. To your point,
Right, right. Uh, have you met Marty Walsh?
no, no, it's way, Jim, way above my pay scale. I'm just
Mine too.
I'm just a trade show guy.
Yeah, yeah.
But the people that he enrolls,
yeah,
from the hospital standpoint, the people from Suffolk Construction, they're the biggest construction company probably in the country.
Mm.
I'm sure they are. Massive projects that they're involved with. I don't think it is anybody that worked on a project, their aspiration to build a temporary hospital inside a convention center with Teamsters and nurses but because of the leadership that Marty and Governor Baker offer, they were happy to enlisted their services, and they did it more than willing.
Right.
Yeah, and a pleasure to go ahead and work with.
Right. Now, you had mentioned earlier that you remove the materials, you're storing the materials. Do you own the materials?
No. We do not own the materials. Our involvement or our contribution is to kind of help manage the loading, the unloading, the scheduling, following the paperwork, the protocol that they need to follow, and to keep things safe, and be able to go ahead and react if he were to call, or somebody were to call today or tomorrow to say, hey, we need some men and some trucks and activate stuff within a day or two. That's what we're able to do.
Right.
And that's indicative. And that's kind of indicative of our industry. A lot of changes take place during the construction of a trade show exhibit. It might take 2 or 3 days. We've had clients that have come in and say, oh, I didn't realize the front door was there. Can you spin this thing around? Well, it's a 2,000 square foot exhibit. It's up 2 stories. Sure. And they come back in the morning at 8 o'clock and it's done. And well, how'd you do that? Well, we just did it. And we say it's not me. It's the workers, and it's the dedication of the rest of the men and women that do that.
It's everybody, Bob. It's everybody.
Yeah, thanks.
So you had mentioned that your particular line of business has been in a I don't know what you said, depression since this all hit. Right. How are you doing?
We're doing well. I never like to use the word surviving. I'd like to say we're adapting. Unfortunately, we had to furlough a lot of people, and we actually had people, pretty much the entire staff, work through June 1 day a week. That was so the corporation could pay their insurance, so they wouldn't have to go to COBRA. We were fortunate enough to receive a lot of PPP funding, which we were able to expend. And it's our intent to apply for the second round. We're optimistic that that'll happen at some point.
Yes. Yeah.
And then when events are due to maybe start to come back, late spring is optimistic. Fall, I think, is very optimistic. And then next year being 2022, it'd be nice to have everybody back in full force.
Right. Do you think that this is going to change your business fundamentally? Like how trade shows are set up and how they run?
That's a good question, because there are a couple states, Florida, Texas, that are actively accommodating shows, trade show events. And one of our, and I said on a couple different boards that kind of we try to keep our fingers on the pulse of what's going on. And somebody equated it the other day. They said, well, you can go into a Costco and there's not 6 feet apart, and people are crowded the aisles, and there's not one-way aisles. And those different attributes I just mentioned is what folks are trying to incorporate in trade shows now, as well as masks. So if you can shop at Costco, why couldn't you shop at the Boston Seafood Show? So we're hopeful that comes back. A lot of people are pretty optimistic on the vaccination aspect. And what's been said in our industry is a lot of people are really excited about the testing, the rapid testing that could take place before you get on a plane,
Yeah.
before you enter a trade show, before you get on the plane to go home, to go ahead and be able to identify where the spreaders are, if you will.
Yeah.
And kind of put them at bay. So back to your question, will our industry ever go back? I think so. And I think from the folks that we talk to, everybody wants to do a face-to-face. They want to shake hands again. How many people just want to hug each other again when they see them? And I think if we yearn for that, we'll certainly get to that point.
Yeah, I think so too. I just have to hang on to the fact that once enough people get vaccinated, that to me is going to be the key to a lot of it. I've heard things about, well, if you can go to the grocery store, why can't you do something else? And I do think there's something about not just the exposure, but also the amount of time.
Yes.
And so, when you go to a trade show, oftentimes you're just kind of hanging out for a longer period of time than you would in a supermarket aisle. So I don't know if there's anything like that people may be thinking, and this might not be you, for ventilation or moving the air or, something like that, because kids are in school all day long. Right. And they seem to be doing okay. So there are answers there. I personally feel that masks and sanitation, sanitizers, washing your hands are critical and can really, really make a difference. But you got to do it. Right.
And one of the unique, it's probably worth mentioning, when they transformed the Boston Convention Center, typically their ventilation system recirculates the air every so often. And they used to recirculate the air, not 24/7, but they would only do it for the period of the trade show, and then they would shut it off or put it on low fan. Well, there's a gentleman, Kevin Cox from Cox Engineering, does a lot of hospital work with the ventilation systems, and he went into the Boston Convention Center and created a negative flow. So he took all the air from the loading dock, blew it into the building, and then blew it out. So they weren't recirculating anything. So I think you're going to see that being one of the aspects in a lot of these large arenas and in the large halls.
Yes.
Not to recirculate air, but
yes,
get it in, get it out.
Love it. I think, I'm so glad you said that, because I've always been wondering, why don't you do that? And it sounds like people are doing that.
Yeah, no, they are. We were kind of fortunate, because you asked earlier how we were adapting. We were pretty fortunate a year and a half ago to be tapped to help with the assembly of some glamour tents. A lot of people know it as glamping, and it was up in Sanford, Maine.
Okay.
And we sent a half a dozen people up there to build these tents, and it's kind of a cool structure. Some of the it's probably not just to call them tents, because they're temporary structures. They're covered with canvas. Some of them have bathrooms. Some of them have kitchens.
Okay.
So we got tapped again this summer to go up there, and they started another installation in the Adirondacks. So we were able to send a dozen men up, which grew to 16, 18 people. And because of the COVID, both locations, they had a previous location in Upper New Hampshire, exceeded their expectations from an attendance standpoint by 40%.
Wow.
So where you saw the hotels and a lot of the travel had to take a downturn, as well as our business, this glamour camping outside, and not necessarily a hotel room, but pretty close, really have caught on. So that's another project that we assisted with starting in April through Memorial Day, and then we started up again Labor Day, and we just finished a week ago. We were shoveling snow in the Adirondacks, putting these tents together.
All right. Now, Bob, tell me, glamping is not a trade show. How did you find out about that? How did you get connected?
Well, it was a company out of France. They're called Hotopia. It's kind of cool if you look them up on their website. Sent a request to one of our friendly competitors, and they put them in touch with us. So through a couple Zoom calls and tutorials and a lot of engineering plans, we put together some of our, and it's a Tinker Toy set, which a lot of these trade show exhibits are.
Yeah.
We put some of our talent in place. We were one of maybe 3 labor teams or companies that they hired. They didn't necessarily re-employ the other 2, but wanted to increase our membership. So it was, you can build a Tinker Toy, you can build a Tinker Toy.
Right, right. You should put some of those up in Hopkinton State Park. It could really be something.
They're pretty extravagant. It's kind of a cool project. You go in and the land might be cleared, but you have to level it. You have to put the little stumps in for foundation. You have to level the floor. You build the structure, you stretch the canvas, and then you find yourself putting in bathrooms and kitchens and such.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Now that's a lot like MASH.
That is, yes. Those structures would be real close to that.
Right. All right. This next question I have for you is probably going to embarrass you a little bit, and I'm sorry for that, but I really want to get to this. I have talked with you and met you on several occasions, and you have an extremely kind and compassionate demeanor about yourself. And you know what? You can just tell like what people are like, and it's a pleasure to talk with you because you are not only interesting but interested in what other people are doing. And I'm just wondering where that came from. Is there like a mentor or a situation that you went through in life, and how did you turn out to be so kind?
Well, it's nice, and Jim, I think you hit the nail on the head. We've only met each other a couple times on some occasions. So if you'd see the rest of me, you'd really see the real Bob Dubinsky. No, I thank you for all the compliments. That's really kind. I grew up in Buffalo, New York, and I spent 17, 18 years there. I'm the oldest of 7 kids. I had 2 great parents. And growing up in Buffalo Bills territory. Oh, I think they won yesterday too, by the way. So they're on the way to the Super Bowl yet again after a long hiatus. Folks up in Buffalo are kind of in that Western New York, kind of Midwest area. We could get 3 to 4 feet of snow.
Yeah.
In a moment's notice. And it was always common. You got the snow, you put on your boots, you shoveled your driveway, you shoveled somebody else's driveway, you got to meet your neighbors. And I think that's where a lot of that, a lot of your compliments kind of come from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, coupled with the fact that I got 5 wonderful kids and I have a great family, and it's always been fun to grow up in the town of Hopkinton too.
Yeah.
Been here for 35 years.
Yeah. That's great. That's great.
No, thank you.
And I've talked about that on other shows. I mean, Bob, there's something in the water in Hopkinton. Isn't it just a wonderful place?
It does. It takes all your white T-shirts and it makes them a little duller because there's a lot of iron in that water.
Oh, so you're in that part of the town.
I'm in Woodville, the capital of Hopkinton.
Yes.
Yeah, that gated community. But a little bit of bleach goes a long way with that. But no, people in Hopkinton, and I think we have, I think to thank for that, and it's probably not right to say, but I think we have the townies to thank for that. They knew what this city, they knew what the town was back in 1984, 85, 86, when I moved in, and that they've been able to keep it a bigger town now, but still with that small town kind of caring pitch in. Yeah. And I think it's one of the reasons that I like it so much here, and I'll be here for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, but thank you.
All right, Bob. Loved having you here and having this conversation with you, and I look forward to the next time I get to see you and Jim, maybe have you back on the show.
Yeah, call me anytime. And again, if you want some of that pipe, that blue pipe and drape, we're going to have hordes of the black stuff coming out.
All right, actually, you know what? I'm going to tell you. You know, you were very generous and gave us the set that we use up at the high school for our TV news class, HHS Today.
Wow.
So I may be circling back around to you in the not too distant future about maybe doing an upgrade to that.
Now's the time to do it because we're cleaning out our warehouse. And truth be told, full transparency, somebody else gave us that set to use, and then we just gave it to you. So we're not that generous.
You still get my credit. You still get my credit. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you, Jim. Always good to talk to you. Hey,
Great,
happy New Year and all the best.
Thank you. Same to you. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Cheers.
Okay. And thank you for watching this episode of the Hangout Hour. We invite you back on Wednesday where we'll be live again talking all about events and activities that are happening in our community. Take care, everybody. Have a great day.